Statistics usually don't lie, and the statistics in terms of the incidents of hate directed against the Jewish people, the numbers are unbelievable. Jew hatred is treated differently than any other type of hate directed against people in this country.
Welcome to Global Perspectives. The FBI reports that nearly 60% of religious bias hate crimes in America in 2020 targeted Jews. Nowhere is this increasing threat against Jews more apparent than in New York City. Today, New York has become an epicenter of Jew hatred. Join me for this conversation with one of the leading voices in the fight, former member of the New York State Assembly, Dov Hikind. Dov Hikind, Democrat, former member of the New York State Assembly for over 36 years, and a fighter for the Jewish people internationally and certainly in your former district in Brooklyn, New York. Thank you so much for joining me on Global Perspectives.
My pleasure to be with you.
Dov, as I was referencing just now, you're someone who has truly been advocating for the safety, security, and advancement of the Jewish people, whether they're in your district in Brooklyn, whether it was Soviet Jews who were locked up behind closed doors during the Soviet Union, whether it was Syrian Jews who couldn't get out of Syria at the time. You've been advocating on behalf of Jews, and you've done it at times without any concern for political correctness and where the political winds may be blowing. With that background, I wanted to start our interview by asking you, what is your assessment of the state of anti-Semitism in the United States today, and especially in your own neck of the woods, which is New York?
Well, I think it's quite clear. And, statistics usually don't lie. And the statistics in terms of the incidents of hate directed against the Jewish people, the numbers are unbelievable. Just in the month of February, the statistics that just came out, the highest number of incidents ever in a month. It's happening all the time. It doesn't get the attention that it should. A reporter asked me just a few days ago whether the president at the State of the Union should have mentioned anti-Semitism. And I said, absolutely he should have. If attacks had happened to a much lesser degree against people who are Black or the LGBT community or any of the other groups, only a fraction. Can you imagine? Would the president have mentioned it in the State of the Union address? Of course. But when it comes to the Jewish community, for some reason, there's a different standard. It's not treated the same way. And the fact is, Ellie, that people are afraid. People are concerned. People are putting away their Star of David. People are taking off their yarmulkes.
Well, Dov, I want to stop you there because you just shared so much, and there's a lot to unpack. So first of all, I also saw that same headline. I want to just focus on that for a minute. The headline was, New York City says anti-Semitic crime jumped 400% in February. And so we're seeing this incredibly drastic and concerning rise of attacks against Jews in New York City, mostly Jews who are visibly Jewish. What we're also seeing in places like New York City, but particularly in New York and in Brooklyn, is that the Jews are being targeted by other minority groups, specifically African Americans and Hispanics. And I think my hypothesis is that that's part of the reason, as you mentioned, we don't hear much about these attacks. Tell me what you think is going on in New York City right now.
Ellie, you're so on target. I have been talking about this for the past couple of years. We know who the perpetrators are because we see the video. So it's not a big secret. Like, who are they? What group are they from? Are they from the ultra-right, and so on? No. They are overwhelmingly, maybe 90% plus, from the minority community. And no one is blaming the minority community, But how do you solve a problem if you don't even want to talk about the problem? If you don't want to identify what's going on? Why are so many people who happen to be minority attacking Jews? Those questions need to be asked. We need to understand that and then figure out how do we deal with it. But no one is even having the conversation. It's very rare. I've been doing it for 2 years in the media. But you're right, Ellie. You know, we want to stay away. We don't want to talk about who is committing the acts. We don't want to say it. It's not politically correct to do that.
And
So,
then, Dov, it seems like the perfect storm in terms of victimization and attacks on Jews in cities like New York, because while we're seeing again this increasing rates of attacks on Jews, at the same time we're seeing this trend towards decriminalization, bail reform, and other legislation in that direction, which seems to have in essence caused a continued further rise in the victimization of Jews. Can you tell us a little bit
right,
about those facts in New York City specifically?
absolutely. With bail reform, uh, there are no consequences for acts of hate against the Jewish people. Nobody pays a price. We in our organizations, Americans Against Anti-Semitism, we will be coming out with a report. We've been working on it for quite a while. You know, the ADL tells the world how many incidents of hate against the Jewish people, but no one follows the next step, which is okay, what happened to the perpetrators? The people that were actually arrested, did anyone pay a price for beating up on Jews? And nobody knows. You know, whenever I talk to people, do you know? Do you know? Oh, yeah, what happens? Nobody has a clue. We will be presenting that to the public based on our work. And I think we all know the answer already. No consequences, basically. There are no consequences. You can beat up on a Jew and nothing will happen at the end,
Well,
period.
right. But I think we have some of this information available to us right now. Could you drill down for the audience, Dov? Why is bail reform seeming to be so dangerous in terms of the results in hate crimes, as well as all of this new legislation that I think comes from as a result of the defund the police movement and some of that environment that we're facing in the United States today?
Right. Well, it's the radicals within the Democratic Party in particular. You know, bail reform happened in Albany. And by the way, I can't see in the next decade that changing. The people who actually control the agenda, even though they are a minority, is the radical left in the Democratic Party. And, you know, the socialists, they control the agenda. And you know, what do you expect? It's not just anti Semitism. But, you know, I sat in court recently in Brooklyn Criminal Court for the case that I was involved in with Ina Vernikov, Councilwoman Ina Vernikov, where, you know, these two Jews were in Bensonhurst and one was wearing the IDF t shirt, and someone came over and said, take that off, and threatened him and actually belted him in the face. Okay? A week later, 2 weeks later, I still saw the marks on the face of this young Jew. I was in court the night that this perpetrator, this anti Semite, was arraigned. And I was there an hour early, so I watched a half a dozen cases. I got to tell you, Ellie, every person who came in front of the judge had been arrested 10, 15 times before. You hear this? 10, 15 times before. And now they were in front of the judge again. Many times, you know, many of the cases for violent attacks on innocent people. And I saw these people just walking. And the individual who beat up on the Jew because he didn't like his t shirt, okay, uh, basically was released on $1,000 bail, you know? And forget about the case, you know, when the case will actually happen in court. I mean, look, we're going to follow it and we're going to make sure that the maximum is applied to that person. But the criminal justice system is out of control disaster.
Dov, it's astounding. I mean, what you're describing is astounding because it seems to me that what's happening with the criminal justice system is that perpetrators are arrested by the police. And once they get into the system, it's a revolving door. They're immediately out. You've got this bail reform legislation where people don't have to post bail or very small dollar amounts. And then they're right back on the streets. And we're seeing statistics that as soon as they get back on the streets, criminals being criminals, they are continuing their criminal activities. And again, at a moment where we're seeing a rise in Jew hatred, as you call it, Jews wind up being attacked over and again by these sometimes often same perpetrators. Dov, you're somebody who comes from the Democrat Party, right? You were in elected office as a Democrat, member of the New York State Assembly, which is a very Democratic town, New York, for 36 years. What's your assessment of what's going on with the Democrat Party?
Democratic Party is committing suicide, basically, over the cliff. Unfortunately, sadly, I'm still a registered Democrat, but I think anyone who's followed my career knows that the only thing I'm loyal to is to this country and to my people, the Jewish people. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm an American. I'm a Jew. I try to do what's best for our community, and I've done that all my life. I've supported more Republicans than any other person in my position, and it's not an easy thing to do. I always say that the worst crime you can commit is if you're a Democrat, is to support a Republican. But I've done it all my life. Back with Giuliani, Pataki, El D'Amato, and and more recent times with in 2020 with Donald Trump. We need to look at the individual and say, who has been there for America? Who has been there for our community? And that's how we should do things. And right now, to be very direct regarding your question, the Democratic Party is just not there. I mean, the polling, when Democrats are asked, about their feelings about Israel, support for Israel, the numbers are terrible. It's almost 50-50 or maybe even less than that among Democrats. And, there's an erosion going on as a result of the AOC's, Tlaib's and Omar's and Presley and on and on and on. These people are having an effect. There's no question about it. And Ellie, let me tell you the worst part. The bad people, we know who they are. The anti-Semites, we know who they are. The worst part is the so-called decent people, good people in the Democratic Party, who are silent, who don't do the right thing, who don't speak out, who don't stand up for the Jewish people. I mean, there's a deal coming down with Iran any day now, a disastrous deal. Chuck Schumer, the protector of the Jewish people, as he likes to indicate, has already told us he's for the deal.
Dov, I have to stop you there. We should talk about the Iran deal, but I want to just reflect back for a moment regarding the Democrat Party. So your assessment right now is that perhaps the party is being hijacked by the far left fringes of the party, and too many people who might be moderates are staying silent. One thing that I hear constantly from non-Jews who care about the state of anti-Semitism in this country, who care about the safety and security of Jews and of Israel, they voice frustration to me because they know that the majority of American Jews still vote Democrat. And American Jews are not really holding the Democratic Party accountable. Do you think there's any way that the majority of American Jewry can be reached with this question of whether they will hold their electeds accountable?
Ellie, it's the number one question I'm asked in every interview. Why are Jews still blind to what's good for the Jewish people, support for Israel, etc.? So, it's very complicated. Unfortunately, to many Jews, Israel is not the number one issue, or number two, or number three. It's much lower, unfortunately. But that's why my message to people is always, a lot of people, they want to be Democrats for whatever reason. Their mother was a Democrat, their grandparents were Democrats, whatever it is. But I tell Democrats, stay a Democrat, but vote Republican. There's nothing wrong with that. and I think that's part of a, those who want to change registration, God bless you. Okay, I'm getting very close to doing that, but again, not that I need to. People know where I stand; they know where I'm coming from. And besides, I like speaking as a Democrat because it gets Democrats absolutely crazy, and I enjoy that very much.
Well, if I
But
may interject, Dov, I mean, here, I'm someone who, maybe not as many years on the scene as you've been, Dov, but also watching what's going on in our country with great concern. And the reality is that we do need the Democrat Party to have some sort of a center. We do need Democrats to care about Israel and to care about the safety and security of Jews. And so I actually agree with you that that people don't necessarily need to switch parties, but they need to hold their own party accountable to their purported values.
Ellie, that's music to my ears because so often I was just in Florida on fundraising, and I met some people who said, "I love what you're doing. I love everything. The one problem I have with you, you're still a Democrat." I endorse Republicans all the time. So, it's good to hear that, Ellie. And as I said, you know, I do those interviews. I do them as a Democrat, but a Democrat who's extremely disappointed. I mean, with everything going on, where are the Schumers and the Nadlers and the Schiffs and the rest of that group? Ellie, tell me one single member of Congress, the equivalent of AOC Omar Taleb, on our side, willing to stand up the same way they are. I sort of respect them in the sense that they say what they want to say. They're not ashamed. They're proud of their positions. Why is it only Democrats criticizing Republicans or Republicans Democrats? Listen, anti-Semitism, hate, there needs to be one standard for that, and unfortunately, there are two standards. And Jew hatred is treated differently than any other type of hate directed against people in this country.
Exactly right. And Jove, earlier you brought up the Iran deal, which we are hearing reports any minute now. The Biden administration will be signing some sort of re-entry to the 2015 JCPOA Iran deal, which I was very proud to serve in the Trump administration. And President Trump called the Iran deal a disastrous deal. There are many reasons for that labeling. What are your thoughts about repercussions of this Iran deal for the Jewish people, for the state of Israel, and for Americans?
Yeah, it's really, the repercussions are terrible for America, for Israel. Makes no sense, Ellie. I mean, I scratch my head. I mean, it's insanity. I mean, the Biden administration, the deal is we give them literally tens of billions of dollars, and everyone knows what that money is going to be used for Hamas, Hezbollah, for other terrorist organizations all over the world. It's insane to do that. And the other part is Iran can develop a nuclear weapon. Guess, I mean, this is crazy, within a month or two, or maybe even faster, because we're not even aware of everything they're doing. The present deal is purely a sign of weakness on the part of the Biden administration. Look, who wants a deal more than Israel? Who's more affected by what is going on in Iran? Whose security, whose existence is more in jeopardy than the people of Israel? They want a deal, but it's a deal that makes sense, not a deal that results in more terrorism all over the world. Not a I mean, it's the biggest joke in the world. It really is. There's a rush to do this deal because there's so much on Biden's plate. Let me at least make a deal here. But anyone who looks at this in an honest fashion, Republican, Democrat, I mean, why is this deal okay if Schumer, the 2015 deal, he said was not okay? He voted against it, right? Why is this one
Exactly right.
suddenly okay? tell us, Shomer Yisrael, Schumer.
Exactly right, Dove. And in the context of our conversation, I just need to remind our audience that The Iranian regime was designated by us in the Trump administration as the #1 state sponsors of anti-Semitism in the world, not only because the leadership threatens to eliminate Israel, but they deny the Holocaust as state policy, and they target their own Jewish community, and the list goes on. Dov, before we wrap up our conversation, I also want to bring to our audience one of the many projects that you are working on, which is a book, a curriculum that's coming out for young Jews that not only will teach them about the history of anti-Semitism, but also help them figure out how to respond to it. Can you tell our audience a bit more about how you came to this project and what you're hoping to achieve?
Well, I think that everyone is aware that, unfortunately, our young people, uh, they're very smart, right? Doctors, lawyers, they're very, very successful. But when it comes to the issues that are fundamental, understanding, being able to respond when you're at the university to the kind of Jew hatred and anti Israel stuff that's going on, I'm sorry to say that overwhelmingly, almost without exception, young people, and by the way, adults as well, are just not equipped to deal with the issues, to be able to respond. This book, I just want to tell you, it'll be out in June and people are going to hear about this. And one of the things that's special about this book is that throughout the book, using an app on your phone, you're reading about something, you can scan the page and watch the video of the thing you're reading about. It's incredible.
It sounds incredible. And Dov, when I read the description, I understood that your initial target audience are Jewish kids in Jewish day schools, and you say in the introduction that even they don't know the history of anti-Semitism, even they don't know the issues, and even they are not prepared to fight back. I have my own children who grew up in the Jewish day school system, and unfortunately, I can affirm that fact. Do you hope that once you've reached the Jewish day school audience that you can expand out from there?
Absolutely. I mean, we're going to expand from the very first moment, but I'm especially interested in our young people at schools all over the country. And I think that, there's no one book or one project that will solve any problem. Look, anti Semitism is not going anywhere, it's going to be there. But this is part of my message to your audience. Everyone needs to be involved in some way. Doing nothing is not an option. Support those who are involved. You find a way to be involved. I mean, we are living in difficult times. A lot of people in the Jewish community, ask me, is there a future in America? I can't believe that people are asking that question. My own kids, my daughter with 6 kids, I mean, they ask this question in a very serious way because they see things that are happening that are really scary. I had someone at my Shabbos table 2 weeks ago, a young man, 28 years old, with his fiancee. And he had no problem saying to everyone while we were talking about anti Semitism, he said, and I live on Long Island, he said, when I go to Manhattan, I take off my yarmulke. That was a that was a horrible thing to hear. This, you got to be proud. You got to be strong. Wear that Star of David. We are Jews. We are proud. We are strong. We're not afraid. That's got to be the way we are, not to cower. And we need to be there for each other. Support those people that are on the front lines and not afraid to stand up. Be part of it. So there's a lot to do if you want to do. And that's really my message to everyone. Everybody's against anti Semitism. Wow, isn't that great? They're against anti Semitism. I want to know, what is your plan? Show me the plan. What are you going to do? I want to see it black and white, what your plan is. So far, I don't see any plans.
Exactly right. And I think that this is what is plaguing us all across the country and truly all over the world. Many elected officials are acknowledging the rise in anti-Semitism. Most say that they're against it. Not a lot seem to have a plan. Dov Hikind, I have to tell you, it's really an honor to have you on this show. I think that your message to our audience of maintaining Jewish pride as the son of Holocaust survivors, it's really an important message, and I can't thank you enough for joining me. And we will be looking out for more from your reports from Americans Against Anti-Semitism and this upcoming curriculum and book for our high school students. Thank you so much, Dov, for joining me on Global Perspectives.
Ellie, thanks for having me. I truly appreciate it.
It's never pleasant to delve deep into anti-Semitism and Jew hatred, but I do hope you found this interview with Dov Hikind meaningful. Thanks so much for joining me on Global Perspectives. Join me the next time. And if you like what I'm doing, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Ellie Cohanim.